Welcome to another episode of the Solfate
Welcome.
podcast, where we chat with founders and builders in the crypto ecosystem, more often than not Solana. But today we talked with a cross-chain protocol. We talked with Andriy from AllBridge, and
AllBridge.
I'm not going to lie, that's a
Super
pretty
cool.
cool protocol. It was pretty awesome. Not to mention investment opportunity. Not financial advice, do your own research, all that caveating. But their setup is very decentralized, non-custodial, and something that the community can participate in and sort of deposit into liquidity pools and stuff. And it seems pretty attractive. I'm interested.
James is definitely going to go do some more research, which I love to see. But no,
it was
super
my
cool.
Investor hat on.
Yeah. Well, it was super cool for many reasons. But one of the cool things is, like, on a personal note with Andriy, he very much is putting off this vibe of, and we even said this towards the very end, like, hey, James basically said he's probably going to go do some more research. And Andriy was very direct. He's like, look, this isn't financial advice, but like, we give a bunch of information on our website and we want people to be very informed. And he's like, read the docs, read all this information before doing anything with your money. And like, that general mentality is phenomenal, for one. But then all the other things that AllBridge is doing, like we talked about, how they're like doing their cross-bridge or cross-chain bridging. And I don't know, I thought it was really cool. I've never really thought about how a cross-chain bridge would work. Yeah. And like the off-chain message signing kind of stuff. And it sounds like AllBridge uses Wormhole, which is really cool. So we have AllBridge and Wormhole working together as these two very big bridging protocols on Solana and other chains, of course. But they're like working together, which is beautiful for the ecosystem.
Some super unique composability stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And whether you're someone who is trying to transfer funds cross-chain, or whether you're an investor, there's opportunities here. There's arbitrage opportunities that he called out in order to sort of keep pools at levels across chains. There's just the straight up deposit into a liquidity pool. All kinds of cool stuff. Definitely listen to the episode. Before we jump into that, we'd like to thank our sponsors for today. We're talking Underdog and what they offer in terms of low code and no code NFT minting and really cool stuff there. And sponsor Phantom on the wallet side of things. We love Phantom. So with that, let's jump into the show.
Let's get to the episode. Nothing in this podcast is or should be considered financial advice. Any opinions and thoughts expressed are solely those of the individual. They do not represent the opinions of any entity. Enjoy.
Well, cool, man. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background, maybe sort of like your pre-crypto into crypto transition, and then your, crypto into AllBridge specifically transition.
Sure. I'll try to make it quick so that whoever is listening to this conversation is not getting bored. When I joined the university to do my bachelor degree, I became specifically interested in networking technologies. So I've been looking a lot into equipment of the company called Cisco, which is from San Francisco. They produce routing and switching devices. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe not. Yeah. It is fine. Roughly 2002, I started my career as Cisco engineer. And then I switched to sales and business development team. And right until I joined crypto in 2015, I've been building data centers around the world. So when I first discovered crypto, I started as a miner. And then I wanted to go deeper into the tech. So I joined the project that specializes in cybersecurity, auditing smart contracts, named Hacken. It was 2017. But then 2018, 2019, I've been working on payments in crypto and non-custodial crypto wallets. And around 2.5 years ago, with my partner, we founded the company, which became AllBridge, and we've deployed the first version of the bridge, and then we deployed the second version of the bridge, and this is how we came into the space. I think that's long story short.
You said it was 2.5 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah, the first version of the AllBridge has been deployed on the mainnet 2.5. It's gotta be soon,
Okay.
I think, 3 years anniversary since the start of the development. Yeah, it's been quite some time.
Well, I mean, I guess first of all, congratulations if you're coming up on 3 years. That's big. Also, I didn't realize AllBridge is the first way I bridged money from EVM chains to Solana was with AllBridge over 2 years ago now. I didn't realize I was using it in the early days of the project.
I think that the easiest way to determine if you used AllBridge in its early days or in its later days is that if you used AllBridge when it was called SolBridge, then probably you were early.
Ooh, okay. I probably missed that then. It would have been spring 2022 was when I was first trying to bridge between the chains, between Polygon and Solana specifically.
I think that our integration Polygon to Solana, it has been extremely successful in terms of volume. We were lucky to do the technical part of the integration before Wormhole did it. So we really attracted some extreme amounts. I do remember a guy who breached 50 mil in a single transaction.
That's a lot.
But also that
would have been extremely cheap because if I recall, at least at the time, it's been a while since I've done it, but at least at the time, it just got cheaper the more you bridged, right? Like it was at least in percentage terms.
No, it actually back in the days it was a flat fee, so I think the guy paid like a couple of dollars to move 50 mil.
Yep. That's what I'm remembering.
As a business founder, regret a little bit at the moment.
Of course. I can imagine. Well, it's funny. I first started bridging because I was being paid to do contract work on Solana, and I was bridging to Polygon because most of my crypto was on EVM chains. And then maybe 6 months later, I was doing the opposite. I was just trying to get all of my funds off of EVM and into Solana.
I think that today, when we switched from the mint and burn architecture to the transfers of native stablecoins, I think that the most popular chains are Ethereum, Solana, and Tron. Probably the fourth most popular one's gonna be still Polygon. So
cool. Well,
it's still working for us.
You're mentioning architecture, so it's a perfect time to ask about the architecture.
Say that. Yeah.
Yes. Go. Well, what specific questions do you have, Nick?
Yeah, I guess I was just going to ask, can you at a high level talk about how AllBridge works, or really any bridging protocol works? It sounds like you're doing things with stable coins, probably on both sides of the bridge, but I'm curious about like the actual architecture of AllBridge and how it's set up and how it works, and how it's even changed over the years. I'm sure, over a couple of years, there's been some design decisions that have altered over the years.
So, generally speaking, there are two ways to make sure that the liquidity is being transferred across the chains. The first way is what we call issuing a wrapped assets, which is essentially an IOU being created by the bridge smart contract. So that means that if you take Matic from Polygon, take it to Solana, and on Solana, Wormhole, Portal Bridge, and AllBridge would print, I'm trying to make it simple to understand, its own version of the bridge token, which is okay, but it means that those versions of the tokens, they are different, and that creates a lot of confusion. I will give you this example. Let's not take Matic. Let's take a stablecoin and bridge it between different chains. And so what we have right now on Solana, we've got native USDC that is being issued by Circle. It is contract owned by Circle. Now, there is another version of USDC that is being breached from Ethereum through Portal Bridge to Solana, which is different USDC. And there is potentially what we did, it is USDC that was breached by AllBridge. But things, they actually get even worse here. Because if we breach USDC from Ethereum to Solana by AllBridge, it's going to be one version of USDC. And then if we breach USDC to Polygon from Ethereum, and then we take it from Polygon to Solana, it's going to be one more version of USDC. You can imagine how those things pile up. And this is definitely not the best user experience. And while we were doing that, we were constantly thinking what we can do to make the life of our users easier. And we have been communicating a lot both with Wormhole and Circle because we all are in the same ecosystem and we all know about the user problems. So what we decided to do instead is we decided to go from the mint and burn model when the breach issues its own version of the token. Instead, we decided to switch to liquidity pools where the liquidity sitting in the pool, it is the real USDC. By real USDC, I mean the USDC owned by Circle in that case. And then the role of the bridge, instead of issuing a new token within the ecosystem, would rather be switched to delivering the message that the funds should be released from the liquidity pool. So that was the change of the whole concept. This is why today we run two products. The first one is called Classic. It is still on the market. It is still there, but we are actively thinking about sunsetting it at some point. And the second one is the one that operates with the real stablecoins, where we partner up with Circle for both having access to the existing USDC, for having access to what they call CCTP, Circle Cross-Chain Transfer Protocol. And we also partner up with Wormhole because we wanted to see ourselves not like as competitors issuing different tokens, but rather in partners. So what we are currently actively discussing, I'm not sure if this information it is easy to share, but what I can say that even today in the interface, you can have a possibility to deliver the message using the Wormhole rather than our own messaging. And why we did that? Because we believe that a Wormhole set of validators, which they call guardians, it is more decentralized than the architecture that we have. I think that more or less describes the current business journey and where we are aiming at. But you will see some cool announcements later, hopefully until the end of winter.
Okay. What I'm curious, that difference in architecture, is there a cost difference? Not, and I don't necessarily mean for the user, I just mean in general in terms of, overall resources to perform the bridging process. Is there a cost difference between them? Is there a security difference between them? Right. Obviously, there is a user experience difference, but I'm curious sort of on the other side of things.
So generally speaking, if we are operating with native liquidity, this liquidity should come from somewhere. I mean, compared to the concept where the bridge prints its own version of the token. So how we resolve this issue is that we take 0.3% from each transaction. And then from those 0.3%, we take 20% to us as the company that runs the bridge. And then we distribute 80% to those who are holding their liquidity in the liquidity pools to make sure that the liquidity is there. Of course, if the bridge creates the token rather than operates with native liquidity, the bridge does not have any internal costs, which is true, which makes the transaction way cheaper. But at the same time, there is a problem which we call the fragmentation of liquidity. So let's say AllBridge as a bridge gives you an IOU, and then you still need to take it somewhere. On Solana network, we were usually partnering up with Saber protocol, which was ensuring that there is a way to transfer one asset to the other. Now that we came to the architecture with liquidity pools, it is probably, in a way, a little bit more expensive for the user on the side of our protocol. But if you take all the parts considered, so let's say you bridge using AllBridge Classic, you take it to Saber. On Saber, you perform the swap from one asset to the other, and then you take it to Jupiter or Orca, where there is liquidity for the asset that you swapped into. It's going to be the same number pretty much. What makes the market different today, it is actually the incentive of the Circle and the CCTP protocol, where the Circle enables transfers of USDC to USDC on different chains with almost zero fees, because the Circle essentially owns the USDC smart contract. So for them, there is no problem of changing one asset into the other as long as it is the same asset from their perspective. And of course, in that way,
that's super interesting. I've never thought about it like effectively as USDC themselves, or like Circle as issuers of USDC can easily allow effectively bridging, like native bridging of USDC, since they have the ability to mint additional tokens at their own discretion, following their policies and all that sort of stuff. So that's interesting. I guess that, yeah, especially was it CCTP cross?
Circle, Circle cross-chain transfer protocol. So what happens there? It is like the easiest way to understand this thing is, let's say Circle runs its own version of the bridge, mint and burn bridge, which is designed specifically for USDC without any other assets. But because they have the ownership of the smart contracts on all the chains where the bridge is supported, that enables not the wrapped version of USDC to be transferred, but the native one. And that makes it pretty cool. I cannot, not because I don't want to, but because I don't have any details at the moment, I cannot share when there's going to be a specific launch for CCTP on Solana, but I do assume and probably can share that it is work in process. So while right now those swaps are permitted between EVM chains, I think that sometime in the future, this year, fingers crossed, you will be able to take USDC from Ethereum and natively swap it to USDC on Solana without the fees associated with that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So let me circle back to make, well, no pun intended, about Circle. I want to go back to make sure that I fully understand effectively how AllBridge like does the liquidity pool version of the bridging protocol using USDC. So to make sure I fully understand it, it's, say, for a use case of there's a user on Ethereum mainnet and on Solana mainnet, they want to bridge tokens between. They will say they're coming from Ethereum to Solana because bullish, and they effectively transfer USDC into the liquidity pool that is managed by the AllBridge Ethereum contract. You do some sort of message signing, like verification type thing between the Ethereum contract, and then you have some off-chain Oracle type system that is signing messages and posting them to the point where the Solana AllBridge program contract can interpret those messages and say, hey, this person has migrated 10 USDC from Ethereum to Solana. And then on Solana, from the Solana USDC liquidity pool, it effectively takes out those 10 USDC, and now you have native USDC on Solana. Is that the synopsis of the entire user flow? And then you have native tokens. You could do whatever you want.
It is just a little bit more complicated than that, because we not only support USDC, we also support USDT. We used to support BUSD. Are you familiar with Curve Finance?
Vaguely, yeah.
So what Curve Finance permits you to do is you swap one stable coin into the other. but it's going to happen on the same chain, like Ethereum. What we do instead, we are not using the appropriate curve finance formula because it is not permitted for sure. But the concept, just to understand it, is we sort of do the same. We take stablecoin on one chain and we swap it into stablecoin on the other chain. And the reason why we focus on stablecoins is that we want to make it easier for users to understand how much value he receives, he or she, right?
Oh, yeah. It makes so much sense.
So if you would be swapping Ethereum into Sol, you would need to calculate in your head, everything related to the current Sol price, Ethereum price, and their price ratio. And if you're swapping USDT from Ethereum into USDC on Sol, you know that it is probably almost the same value because it is, bound to USDT. So we sort of help you to do this transfer. And later, if you want to do this like ETH to Sol, that would happen like that. ETH is being converted to USDT or USDT on Ethereum. Then we do this process of transferring the liquidity across the chains. Our messaging layer informs Solana, release it while the funds arrive here, and then you can finalize the swap, for example, on Jupiter or Orca or wherever. So we operate the liquidity pools and we make sure that the message gets through.
That's way cool.
Okay.
I was just as you've been explaining this, one thing going in the back of my mind is how does the liquidity pool return? How do the liquidity pool returns compare to other liquidity pools across the system? Because typically, right, your liquidity pool's returns are going to be sort of proportional to like swap volume, more or less, like the demand for swaps versus the supply of the liquidity pools, and that's sort of going to stabilize into something relatively close to similar returns. This seems like a different mechanism entirely. So I'm curious, like how do the returns compare to, like, if you were to drop funds into a liquidity pool, a swap liquidity pool?
So there are two, if we are speaking returns like withdrawal of funds, or we are speaking about returns like APR.
I'm thinking more like APR. So if I wanted to say, hey, I don't have anything to bridge, but I am curious, I want to participate in this, I'm going to deposit into this liquidity pool, what sort of returns can I expect, and what are the levers or what are the factors that I should be aware of that will impact returns, right? So that I can be an informed investor, if you will.
So first of all, in our system, there are no guaranteed returns. So that means that we provide you all the data, like for the last 7 days, 30 days, whole time period for the specific pool. We actually did a lot of updates in our recent analytics model that helps you to see even the graphs, the charts of what happens there, what is the average return, what is the return day per day, etc., etc. But at the same time, because of the nature of our business, we are not something that is like UST on Anchor. We cannot promise you that you will get those 90% APR per year, because what is important here is how much liquidity we've got in the pools, how those pools are being used. So more people depositing more liquidity leads to less APR. More volume, including the pools, because of this 80 to 20% ratio means more APR, because the amount is being literally taken from every single transaction. And you can see all the transactions on chain. So we are very transparent about this information. You can use the Explorer. You can see our smart contracts. You can even select the specific chain and see what happens on the specific chain. This is part one. Part two here is what will happen when you want to withdraw the funds. So you asked me about the risks that are being associated with the liquidity deposit. Apart from the risk of being hacked and the liquidity being drained, which again, I hope that will not happen, but we still need to consider it. What is important here is that if we see the situation where there is less liquidity available in the pool right now, then you want to take out of it. So let's say our whole pool of liquidity on Solana today is $2 million. And it is all of those $2 million belongs to you. Users have been actively bridging to Solana. So they have been taking liquidity out of the pool. So let's say right now you have deposited $2 million and we have $1.5 million available at the moment, right? It is theoretical scenario, but you still asked about the risk, so we need to consider it. So two things will happen here. First of all, the auto-balancing mechanism within the bridge, it actually incentivizes the people to bridge to unpopular direction. So, I don't know, Bonk is going to the moon on Solana. Everyone is taking their USDC on Ethereum and bridging to Solana. That means that we end up in the end of the day with a lot of USDC on Ethereum and little USDC on Solana. Those people who are willing to bridge the other way, they can get more liquidity than they bridge. So it is like positive slippage. So you bridge 100,000 backwards, and you end up with 101,000. So it's like natural arbitrage. And the mathematic formula, it keeps doing that all the time. And we share it both in our API and in our UI. So those who are willing to take the risk and bridge the other way, they will, in the end of the day, clear the balances. And the second answer...
Oh, that's super interesting.
Yeah, it's been there from day one.
Bridge liquidity pool arbitrage. That's an interesting concept there.
We came up with this concept because we don't want to have any access to the user liquidity. We are a non-custodial project, and because of the legal reasons. So we needed to come up with the mechanism when there is a way to do it somehow, either one way or another. So instead of auto-balancing the pools ourselves, which we probably could do, but again, that would mean that we have the access to user funds, which we didn't want. We are paying those who are doing it the other way. And the second answer to your question is that if there is this unlikely scenario when you want to take more money from the pool than there is there at the moment, you, instead of taking it on one chain, can perform a bridge swap transaction. So let's say you deposited 2 mil, as I said. There is 1.5 mil in Solana. You don't want to take 1.5 mil instead of 2 mil because you will lose 25% of your funds. So you will perform the bridging to the chain when there is more liquidity available. So you will take 500,000 on Ethereum and 1.5 mil in Solana. It is not exact number, but I'm just trying to explain how that would work.
Mm-hmm. So as a depositor, my sort of potential risk is that I could get stuck in this scenario where I can't withdraw all of my funds on the deposit,
on the specific chain
I deposit. Yeah. Okay. So which I think some people may see this differently, but it's like if I feel very confident in USDC, which I do, then it's not so much that there's risk of losing my funds. It's more the inconvenience of having to, deal with those funds on a chain that I don't typically work with.
True.
Right.
True.
But that which is not a massive financial risk. I'm not saying it's none, but it doesn't seem like a massive financial risk. This arbitrage between chains incentive that you've created sort of solves that problem.
It does. There is another scenario which can be potentially harmful for the users. It is the scenario if we add the stablecoin asset that would be pegged to USD 1-to-1, but it would depeg like UST did in the back of the days. And because of the whole nature of the ecosystem, it would automatically affect all the pools involved because of the arbitrage, right? Something goes down 10%, it would mean that all the pools would go down 5%, not the isolated single pool, because people would be arbitraging. And that is something that causes me a lot of headache because I'm constantly thinking on one side of adding more chains and more stable assets, but I don't want to risk the user funds because I myself has had issues with UST. For example, I have been considering adding MIM, Magic Internet Money, or adding Frax, or adding FD-USD, which is right now, I think, is being heavily pushed by Binance. But I'm trying to be really careful about those decisions because I know that if we do a mistake there, and it will depeg, there's going to be a lot of harm for everyone. What I've been thinking today is I've been thinking if we can create sort of the governance mechanism for the liquidity providers. So instead of making this decision as the founder and CEO, I would be able to have a vote of the community. So you come to me and say, FDUSD is being backed by CZ, right? All the deposits right now on Binance from BUSD are being converted to FDUSD. That probably means something. I don't know to add it or not to add. But those who hold liquidity in the liquidity pools, they have skin in the game. So my vision here is that if we can ask those people what they think about that decision, and they make this decision, then in the good scenario, everyone's going to be happy, earning more money. In the best scenario, it's not going to be the protocol to blame. It's rather be the collective responsibility of everyone to add asset or not to add.
So do you currently have a governance token then? Or is this sort of a potential future?
I played with governance token back in the days for the original classic bridge, but it was not that risky and complex back in the days. I used it to make sure that the people can determine how the rewards are being distributed. Right now, when we have this product where we have in December, I had 100 mil volume. That's a lot, right? And I want to be really careful about the decisions. So I'm thinking of the proper structure to introduce something that is related to governance. And here it is another important thing. I don't want to do it for the reasons of fundraising or something. So the protocol is profitable. I don't want to create a token that the community would dump, etc., etc. Instead, I want to find the way of how we add new blockchains and new assets. And I think that DAO mechanism here can be something useful.
What does it actually look like to add a new blockchain or a new asset on an existing chain? Like, is it, like, I guess, like, technically, what does it look like? Do you, like, on, say, Ethereum, if you wanted to add some specific Ethereum-based token, do you have to deploy a new Ethereum smart contract, and then your Solana program, you can just upgrade and then, you know, do a PDA or something? Or, like, how does, like, technically, how does that actually, what does that actually look like?
Oh, we need a new smart contract. And it is also something that I argue a lot with my co-founder and business partner and CTO. because what he tells me that whenever we add a chain or an asset, it exponentially increases the complexity of the system. So it's not like we just deploy a chain. When we deploy a chain, we need to make sure that the messaging works from the chain to all of the other chains that are being supported. We are discussing a few chains at the moment that we want to add. One of them is Base, and the other one, which I hope to see soon, is Stellar. Once Stellar launches its Soroban. Soroban on Stellar means that they will have smart contracts, which is quite new for Stellar. Why we are interested in that integration? Because I have been working with the guys from Stellar for quite some time, and once they acquired the MoneyGram, they've got a lot of Web 2.0 users. So if we can do a possibility to get in and out of the ecosystem using the stable coins for all of those who are sitting there in Web 2, I think that's going to be a huge boost for the crypto market in general. So this is why we're working on this specific integration. It will depend not only on us, but it will also depend on the deployment of the Soroban network itself. Hopefully, it would come out in winter somewhere or spring. Let's say winter, spring. I don't know. It's again, we have been testing our smart contracts already a lot, and we see a lot of value there, potential. Imagine someone from MoneyGram being able to ape into Bonk on Solana in one click. So that is something cool, right? And that has not been on the market yet. But we still need to see that the technology is ready.
Your sort of mention of additional smart contracts on new chains, making the system more complex made me think about just smart contract risk in general. And I'm curious what sort of interchain risk exists. So if your smart contracts are totally solid across, Ethereum, Polygon, Solana, Tron, but then there's a problem on some other smart contract on some other chain and there's a hack there, how does that impact the rest of the system versus how much of that impact is localized to that chain?
It can potentially lead to the impact on the whole ecosystem. That is exactly why we are trying to be really careful about what we add, and we try to test it and audit it. So we so far had 5 different audits already. For the Stellar Soroban launch, because it is the new tech, we are doing the separate audit, which is being supported by the foundation. So when we agreed to proceed with the integration, we said, hey guys, look, we don't know how things would take on from here. We don't want to risk the whole ecosystem. Let's make sure it goes smooth. But yeah, there is a real risk here, each and every chain being added, especially if it is not the EVM chain, which we are pretty sure that we have, double checked over the course of the years, but it is something non-EVM. It is difficult. So as of today, for non-EVMs, we support Tron because USDT on Tron is being popular in the OTC markets around the world. And we support Solana because we've been Solana guys like from day one. And we're adding Stellar. Maybe we will add some more, but it is hard for us to do that, not because we don't want to as a technical team, but rather because of this issue that you raised about the cybersecurity.
This is all sort of coming together a little bit in my mind, because as we were talking about returns earlier, I just like pulled up your website and was looking through these liquidity pools, and most of these returns, it looks like they're in the 20, above 20% APR. And like you said, there's no guarantee of returns, but it looks like historically they're pretty high for stablecoin liquidity pools, right? Like I think typically stablecoin returns are sub 10% APR. And so it seems like that it makes sense that they're a little bit higher. That's it, that's the market at play balancing the potential smart contract risk across many chains with higher returns, so that sort of incentives are balanced out appropriately.
I do personally believe that those numbers would go lower in the future.
Yeah,
for the natural. As people add more liquidity, because let's say if we look back into September or October, we were sitting about 2-3 mil in liquidity in TVL, locked in the liquidity pools. Right now, this number comes to 10 mil, which is good, which is I'm quite happy about. But if we maintain the same amount of volume being transferred, and more people deposit into liquidity, that would mean that in the end of the day, the numbers would be lower. I think that 20% for stablecoin on this market, it is higher than the usual. And probably the reason for that is that the people are taking this risk-reward concept, so they cannot trust the security of the existing protocol the same way they trust, more established ones.
Yeah.
And at the same time,
it's also. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that we created this system where it is auto-balances itself. So 20% APR does not mean that it would be always like that. It means that at the current market and the current risks associated with the protocol, the liquidity is provided by people who are willing to deposit their funds for that APR. Then, let's say more people deposit, same volume, the numbers would be lower. Numbers would be lower, some people would withdraw.
Yeah. So in a presumably in like a really big bull market, you would see more cross-chain bridges, right? More people bridging between chains, which is going to drive up revenue for the total system, which is going to drive up the APR, which is going to attract people to deposit into the liquidity pools, which is going to drive down the APR again. And so you're just always sort of reaching this balance where people feel comfortable depositing their money based on the sort of risk reward associated with the protocol. And the longer the protocol exists on the chains it exists on, the more comfortable people get, the more they feel like, okay, I'll deposit, and even at lower and lower APRs. So I agree with you that I do think over time that number will probably slowly go down. I think right now though, it's a great move for folks who are comfortable with the potential risk, right? 28% APR on USDC is an incredible return if you can, afford to put your money there and, with whatever associated risks.
Agreed. Also, what I've been researching, I have been contacted by certain insurance protocols. So let's say part of our transactions are already being insured on LeFi, but how that works, I think the service is being provided by InsureAce. They insure the transaction while it's been going through. What I've been looking for instead, if there would be a protocol, a company that would be willing to insure the liquidity pools instead, that would be something interesting for the market. Maybe some people would be eager to earn less APR, but have third-party guarantee that if there is security vulnerability or whatsoever, they will get their funds back. Unfortunately, as of today, I did not find the right counterparty for that, but maybe that would appear at a certain moment, and I'm totally open to that. I think that is something cool.
Yeah, that would be
awesome.
Pretty
interesting idea. Yeah, like insurance on the liquidity pools themselves. That does seem like a way better, like from the user perspective, insurance on the pool funds seems like a way more promising use of insurance vice the in-flight transaction before settled on each chain. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I wonder, we need to do an episode on insurance related things. We need to find some people that know things about this.
I was gonna say it would be really. I'm like wondering if it's even possible to create a decentralized insurance protocol that, you know, ensures liquidity pools across, you know, many different protocols, so that there's sort of, yes, there's smart contract risk associated with all of them, but very little risk that all of them are going to be problematic at once, right? It's like if you're insuring many different protocols, you know, and getting revenue from all of them, and you have to pay out on occasion. I don't know. I wonder if, I'm not an insurance guy, but it'd be fascinating to have like someone who knows that space.
Me neither. I can also suggest that if there is someone who is willing to do that, maybe it would make sense to work with the cybersecurity auditors. So let's say we've got a designated cybersec company. We approach them and say, hey guys, can you do the audit? They say yes. And then there is their co-partner providing the insurance in case the cybersecurity audit goes well. That would make sense for all the parties involved.
Yeah, that's actually fascinating. Got gears turning over here. It's like, maybe I'm starting an insurance company, Nick.
Yeah, that's a really interesting, I've never thought about it. I mean, I guess like it's like mostly a complete segue, but you could like each transaction, you know, especially on Solana, you could take throw an additional instruction in the transaction and then help fund and bootstrap the liquidity within the insurance fund itself. Maybe that like gets auto staked and then helps, you know, build the insurance fund in perpetuity. Like, yeah, that could be a super interesting thing.
Oh, that's interesting too. I was thinking insuring the liquidity pool, but you could also insure, it could be individual insurance too, where it's just like, hey, I want all of my stuff across Solana insured. Let's, you know, I'll pay a tiny fee of every transaction I do in exchange for if something happens to my funds. Anyway, yeah, whatever. That's a tangent. Before we, you know, I want to make sure before we close out this call, we talk a little bit about the Phantom integration, because that was one of the more recent things that sort of I read about AllBridge, is this integration, and it's kind of a 3-part integration, right? There's Phantom and there's AllBridge, and what's the third?
Li-Fi.
Li-Fi. Is that
Li-Fi, the bridge aggregator that made this whole cooperation possible. So basically, we were not speaking directly to the Phantom team. We are speaking more to Li-Fi team, and they were speaking to Phantom, and we put all the bits and pieces together with their help. Okay. So I'm really grateful to the guys.
Cool. How does that? I guess, like, what is a bridge aggregator? That's a foreign concept to me.
So the role of Li-Fi, I will try to explain in my own words. Probably you can ping them and also do the call with them, but it could be interesting. But anyways, just to make things simple, there are different bridges in the world. So the user is looking for the best possible route, how they call it. So they can use Portal Bridge by Wormhole, they can use AllBridge, they can use the variety of other bridges, which are there somewhere on the market. So what the bridge aggregator does, it provides the user the list of options. You can go here, 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 here. The cost would be like this, and that.
So Phantom is using Li-Fi, but
under the hood for swaps.
But it sounds like they're also. I haven't seen any other options for bridging on Phantom outside of AllBridge. So are they using multiple options, or is it exclusive to AllBridge?
Oh, no. We, of course, we cannot forbid users from doing any other integrations. It is just today we support quite unique blockchain integration that in some cases means that we could be at the moment the only route. But at the same time, I know that the guys from Wormhole, they are actively developing. We're speaking to them on the regular basis. Then there is AllBridge. I know the founder, Alex. He's a cool guy. He is also actively looking into Solana ecosystem. Maybe more companies would arrive at some point. I don't know. For now, it is like that. It could change.
It sounds like you are a very you're the type of person who's very like maybe like abundance mindset is the right phrase. Like you're not. I would expect someone running a bridge protocol to maybe not be as open in conversation with other bridge protocols, but it sounds like you view these things as more like, hey, we're all in this together, instead of we're competing companies. I'm curious.
We do have competition, and I know my competitors, but at the same time, I think that there is no point in arguing with each other. So what I can do as the founder, I can plan my further steps in terms of technology development, business development, what I want to do, and what I can present to the users who are using my product. But I think it is in a way stupid to ignore that other companies are still there, and to fight them, it is even more stupid. It was the same. I can give you this example. When we first deployed our first version of the bridge, the one that we called SolBridge, we were sort of making a competitor to Wormhole, which in the end of the day, I realized that was wrong, because it is inconvenient for the user to have two different versions of the same asset. So at some point, I met with the guys from Wormhole and said, hey guys, look, you're right now focusing on the messaging layer. I'm right now focusing on cross-chain stable swaps, which you're not doing right now. So let's do like that. I add your messaging, and we do present the solution to users. So that means that no one is being heard. I am doing what I am doing, like stablecoin stuff between the chains. They're doing what they're doing, messaging layer. Everyone is happy.
Yeah.
That's cool. That makes a lot of sense.
That's fascinating, right? Is to sort of find the complementary pieces where you can work together instead of focusing on the competition. Because like you said, there is of course some element of competition, but you're just saying, hey, I prefer to focus on where we can be collaborative, and that works better.
It also helps with all of the technical things of like, if someone else is building this one aspect that, you don't have to commit development cycles to necessarily working on that exact thing. You can all collaborate. So yeah, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense.
So in that specific example where, Wormhole is handling the messaging layer, AllBridge is handling the liquidity pool and swap layer, right? The stablecoin pool and swap layer. That's what you're saying? So I guess that's the question I have there, I guess, is about like the incentive for Wormhole. Presumably did they charge for that cross-chain messaging? I guess I'm just not super familiar.
So the users, they are paying the fees whenever the transaction is being performed. Those fees, they are quite low. I think that compared to the fees of maintaining the infrastructure for liquidity swaps, the messaging layer, it is just a little bit more than the regular, gas fees. I don't have any information today about their future business plans, but I think that today we've got like two major players on the market. We've got Wormhole with their messaging, and we've got Layer 0 with their messaging. Mm-hmm. And they are trying to offer different solutions, but they are targeting the same market.
Yeah, well, that is interesting, and I think probably smart of you to say, hey, Wormhole is focused more on data transmission, and we're focused on how do we fulfill on that data request at the endpoint, right, on each chain, kind of thing, which is neat. Well, sweet. We're coming up close to time, and so I we always ask the person we're talking to before we wrap if there's anything you specifically want to tell our listeners, you want to get out there. Is there anything we haven't touched on in this call that you're saying, oh, I wish we talked about this with our users because now's the time?
I think that one more thing that I would like to add to this conversation is today we mostly view the bridges as sort of B2C solution, right? So the users are moving their liquidity across the chains. And what I hope to see in the future is more protocols coming to us or to other players on the market. It is ultimately their own decision for more like B2B solution. So let's say you're building an AMM or perps or whatsoever, landing protocol maybe even, and we can handle for you the infrastructure layer for transferring the liquidity. So you don't need to worry about that across the chains, of course. And you, on the other side, do your business. I think that the proper way to proceed in this market, it is what we have been a lot of discussing in Solana ecosystem. It is composability, right? So we understand our role, we understand wormhole role, and we are actively searching for more protocols that can use the tech under the hood. And over time, I like this example that if you're driving with your family in a car over the bridge, you're not necessarily thinking about who built this bridge. You're thinking of going to other place, right? So your internal concept decision is not to use this specific bridge. You just want to get from point A to point B. And those who build the bridges, they just provide you the infrastructure, which can potentially be even hidden for the majority of the users. So my idea here is that if you're building cross-chain protocols, ping me. I would be happy to help whenever you need liquidity being transferred. This is how I see the future of the bridges. That is call to action, if I may.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And there is a chance that some of our listeners are either considering or already actively building some kind of cross-chain protocol. So if you're hearing this, Andrey's the guy to talk to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll have Andrey's contact information in the show notes, of course.
Sure. Anytime.
Yeah. Is Twitter, DM on Twitter maybe one of the better ways to reach you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Andriy, it's been a pleasure. It was so great meeting you and chatting about AllBridge and everything you guys are doing. I am, this is not financial advice, but I'm probably going to deposit some USDC into an AllBridge liquidity pool here later today. So, take a look. But yeah.
I would kindly advise anyone before depositing liquidity to go through the documentation and actually read what is happening, how that works, what happens with your liquidity, how you can withdraw it, because and also go and take a look at every single liquidity pool. There is a button called details. So you can see all the statistics. I really want anyone using our protocol to make informed decisions. Not like, hey, there is nice APR, let's go. Let's, let's jump in. I want you to, if you decide, which is not my advice, it is your decision. Yeah, I want you to know what is happening.
Yeah.
Right.
This is,
I
just clicked on the details here, and this graph is fantastic.
Thank you.
You can go back as far as a year and get, I'm on the Solana pool specifically, the USD.
You can also pool. Compare different
but you can see the
together.
APR the whole time. This is fascinating. Spoken like someone who is very much cares about your, everyone involved in your ecosystem. You're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. You want everyone to be aware of how things are working, what it is they're putting money into. I very much appreciate that. I think that's something we need more of in the crypto ecosystem, more broadly.
Definitely.
fewer grifters and more people who are trying to create genuine community and involvement. So thank you, Andriy. We will wrap for now. But yes. To all the listeners. Yeah, sorry, Andriy, you got last thing you want to say?
No, just ping me if you have any other questions. Always happy to answer them.
Excellent. All right. Well, to the listeners, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.